Good afternoon, everybody. This is the second day of the deliberations for the Regional Public Transport Plan Hearing Subcommittee. We just to remind you again that this has been recorded. The public deliberations are recorded, and the recording will be made available on the Regional Council website following the meeting and archived for a period of 3 years. To those members in the public, and we don't have any in the moment, all care will be taken to maintain their privacy. However, as a visitor in the public gallery, their presence may be recorded. By remaining in the public gallery, it's understood that their comments are given, their consent is given if the image is used inadvertently. Just an also reminder to all present that local government decision making affords no protection to councillors, council staff or officers and the public for comments made during the meetings that are subsequently challenged in the court of law and determined to be slanderous. I call for apologies. I've got apology for lateness for Commissioner Selwood. Any other apologies? There have been none. I'll move. Councillor Thurston has seconded. All in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. We're just continuing on from yesterday. You've already declared any conflicts, which there weren't any, if I remember rightly. So, Bron, we are with you. And we've got, just before you start, I should say in the apologies, Councillor Nees is notified that she needs to leave at. So she didn't have a mic on, but that was by 3 or 15 at the latest. We're hoping to get this done by 3:30, aren't we, Bron?
So we'll soon extend on with it, in
the right answer is in your hands.
Thank you.
Would hope so.
Just before you start, Bron, Greg.
Thank you, and good afternoon, councillors. Welcome back. After a big day yesterday, can I just say again, thank you for the deliberations yesterday, and just a couple of reflections. After the session yesterday, the staff went away and had a bit of a conversation, as you'd expect, in the huddle in the corner to figure out just the direction from here. I do want to particularly thank you for the energy and passion for the conversation yesterday, and certainly want to assure councillors that I've taken that on board and the staff have taken that on board. Councillor Thompson and I are reflecting on your comments at the end of the day when you were saying, kind of, are you okay? And I want to just reassure you, absolutely. Your comments were motivating, not demotivating. So they really are inspiring and giving us energy rather than taking energy away. So please be assured of that. However, we're also trying to figure out how to respond to it because it is a plan and it's weighty and full of content and everything as it needs to be. And I am still of the view, and we will take this on in the next few days, of the view that we perhaps could do something at the beginning of the plan to try and capture the essence of the energy and the passion and the objectives that we're trying to achieve, to try and really put it right up front. I doubt we can change much in the plan at this late stage, but get some sort of illustration up front. And I think the other thing is when this plan is finally approved, we need to really put our minds to how we do communicate that and the essence of the plan at that time as well. So those are my opening thoughts as reflecting on yesterday. I'm sure we can lift the energy and passion to really show the community what this plan is all about. Thank you, Chair.
Bron, we go to you.
Okay, so just guest recording yesterday, we worked our way through some of the main substantive recommendations on the key recurring themes in the plan. And I guess we got to the point where what I was proposing was a page turning exercise by submitter, whereby we run through the submissions themselves, the detailed responses to those submission points, and members of the subcommittee can raise any matters that they want to, or changes that they are seeking. Just noting that some of our substantive key recommendations have changed, so that will flow through into the document as we re-edit it.
Councillor Thompson. Just hold it down. No, just hold it down for a start. To boot.
Oh, thank you. Are we going to have an opportunity before this is put up to council for approval to go over what will be presumably a final draft, including a preamble or whatever that, you know, displays our aspirational intent? Will we have that opportunity? Because I'm just very conscious we raised a plethora of issues yesterday, and I'm really wanting to see the final draft. And then I have another comment to make.
Chair, it'll be probably in your hands how we do this, but the thinking I had was that we could do some work over the next few days on this and perhaps direct it through you as a first look to see if we are actually responding appropriately, and then find the mechanism hopefully next week to socialise and have everyone within the subcommittee have a look at it. Whether that means actually we need to meet or just perhaps circulate it, I guess is in your hands. We could either do a Zoom or even just pre-circulate, get some feedback.
Well, I think we should pre-circulate it and then just do a Zoom. Yeah, because I think that it would be a mistake not to. This committee's wouldn't be doing its duty if it didn't have the final sign off before it goes to our committee. So I'm very much in favour of that. And I would suggest a Zoom. I think we're not deliberating at that stage. It's just wordsmithing and making sure that our thoughts are captured. So we won't be changing anything from the deliberation as such. And that if we didn't capture the intent we intended, we can change that, because that's part of that was part of the deliberations. But we can't raise anything new. Yeah. Back to you.
Just on that point, will we have minutes that are fairly detailed, Amanda? Because as I say, there was a lot raised yesterday, and will we have those available? Okay, I'm asking available by the time that we get to proofread the final draft.
I'll do my best to get.
Okay, no pressure, but yeah. And look, the other comment I wanted to make is that a number of submitters referred to the Vision 2032 basic submission, which covers, I think it's 10 points. And through you, Chair, my suggestion is that I'd like to see us go through and each of those submission points, because they then feed out like an octopus into a number of other responses. I think it's quite, so they deal with mode shift, emissions reduction, on-demand services, you know, rapid transit, rail, etc., ferries. And I think if we can nail that and what we're happy in terms of our response to that, that would be a useful guide to input to other submitters. Just a suggestion.
You go first, Jane.
Thank you. Look, I have to acknowledge that I literally have not had time to go through all of those detailed responses to the submitters. So I'm worried that it's going to be a very slow process to go through each and every one of them and have staff talk to them. And while I'm saying yes, absolutely, we do need to do that, I just wonder whether we could just go through the plan first, on a page turn basis, in case there's any particular things that we had wanted change on or had picked up from the submissions, because otherwise, you know, I will have gone and I'll have a whole lot of stuff potentially that I haven't had an opportunity to raise. And I was thinking we were going to page turn the plan as opposed to page turning each and every single staff response to the submitters.
Ron, have you got the plan redone with the pieces in? You won't have, will you?
No.
Well, yeah, but the version we've got now is out of date already until we get an update based on the decisions we made yesterday.
And I'd only raise the issue.
Yeah.
We get through all of those submissions. Unfortunately, I won't be able to be here.
Can I just ask, ones I've worked on in the past, what we've done is we've had, because we've talked about the themes that came out, were common themes, we had a generic answer, and then which everybody got, covering those bases, and then added specific bits, add-ins on for, I'm thinking of the guy that wanted dogs, support dogs and things like that would be allowed on buses and little things like that. We would add a note on the end covering what the answer is on that particular issue to that particular letter. Is that how we're planning to do it?
Well, that's the page turn on submitter by submitter, and we're not looking for grammatical or it's just making sure we've got the key issues covered in the red. It's to find if we've got a shortfall. So that's why I think it's important we do that first, and we'll pick up through that any submitter points that we might have missed in the front end.
Mr. Chairman, if you and I support Councillor Nees in terms of going through the plan, draft plan, but if we just take two issues or three issues: mode shift, carbon emission reduction, and on demand, recurring themes throughout this. We made a number of significant comments yesterday, and so they will be presumably being formatted by staff into a response. And it's those responses that I want to be assured that meets what we think we said and intended. So, there are some real key themes, I think, that it would be good to understand how staff intend to respond.
Yeah, I don't want to start relitigating them all again today, though. So
we don't need to, because we go.
Yeah, and they will be taken up. And but most the what we're looking at, there's big picture and then getting into the detail. And you're talking about the detail, aren't you? Because the big picture is generally supported by the submitters. It was that the finessing of the big picture that submitters didn't think we were ambitious enough. And
so in terms of process, we have public transport in 3 weeks on the 22nd of September. Are we going to be taking the final draft to that meeting, or are we hoping to take the actual document to that meeting? Because following on from what Councillor Thompson said, we've made quite a few, dare I say, controversial decisions. Whilst we're all here collectively, I believe, on the same page, we all know our colleagues pretty well and where they're coming from. And I know there's a number who will think that we've absolutely lost the plot, which would be a fair assumption, would it not? But no, in terms of the 22nd, are we going to be, and this is the end of the triennium, of course, are we taking the final document there?
well,
Is that our
Ron,
intention
that's
or
our
hope?
hope, isn't it?
It's our hope, or
Because if we're not doing that, we can't get we want to get it signed off if we can before the end of this triennium.
Yeah. So I guess the intent was the hearing subcommittee makes a recommendation to the Public Transport Committee that would be recommendations reports and a track changes draft of the RPTP with the recommended changes from the subcommittee, and then that would go through the Public Transport Committee for endorsement and a recommendation to the Regional Council.
So we may even need a special public transport meeting following the 22nd of September between then and the full council meeting, perhaps. I don't know.
Well, let's see where we get to, shall we?
Yeah.
We're trying not to,
I know.
because we've got a very tight time frame, and we do want to get it through if we can. Welcome, Commissioner.
Apologies for lateness. I don't
That's
quite
okay.
know where you ended up yesterday, but I take it that you came to some decisions.
We're not telling. We are now going on. Yes, we did. You didn't miss a lot. By the time you left, you heard the brunt of it. So we're just to fill you in. We're now about to start working through the submitter by submitter, just to make sure that we've captured in the front end of this document. We think, but we just want to make sure we haven't missed anything submitter by submitter. Was asked whether we could go through the track changes, but the problem with that is the track changes are not the track changes anymore. So the plan is to, once that's ready for us, we'll have a Zoom sometime next week to actually go through it and see what the final written version of the plan looks like, and we can finesse the final there if we can, so that we can get it to the Public Transport Committee on the 22nd.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So 26 or something. Yeah. So the 22nd is our last opportunity, really, as a Public Transport Committee, because within 4 days, I think there is a full council meeting. So we need to get it. Is it the 29th? Yeah. Okay. So that's where we're up to. I understand this is not an ideal process because it is very tight for time, but let's do our best and see where we get to. At the end of the day, if we're not satisfied when we go through in our Zoom meeting, we don't have to put it up. We can defer it, but that's not an ideal thing. It puts a lot of responsibility then on a new council that might have different participants who haven't been through the process, and the last thing we want is to have to start again. Okay? Ron.
So just to be clear, we're running through submitter by submitter?
I'm in your hands on that, but that's what you...
Okay, I'll start doing that. I'll basically just do a summary of the themes for each submission, and people can raise any points that they want to. So we're starting on page 129, RPTP 0001, first submitter. So they had two main submission points. One was around looking for trams and ferry services in Tauranga, and a second point with some recommended service changes to a particular service. So I guess these themes are dealt with in our substantive recommendations, and those will be modified according to yesterday's discussion.
Do you have without us having to go back and look at each one, when you say submit a one, are you able to give a name, like Dr. Victor Luca?
I believe not.
Okay, then we can just...
I found it a bit unhelpful.
What?
I found it quite unhelpful not knowing the name.
Exactly. So let's just be sure it's Dr. Victor Luca, of the scientist and Wakatani District Councillor. That's the man.
That's submitted number 65.
Not on my P1. I'm looking at the original.
Submission number 1. Is that what we're talking about on page 129? There is reference to trams and ferry transport in his
Okay, so you're right. That might be a late one, but it's come. Have I might have added that is. Sorry, it's not one. That is a late one. I'd put it into my folder. Number 1 is Alex Herbert Ward. Yep, sorry, that was my mistake. I've had that late one at the front of my. By exceptions, anything there?
Okay, moving on to number 2, just 1 point. It was around bus stops in Tauranga. I think specifically looking for lighting, and we note that that's an important part of providing the infrastructure, and we've referred it to Tauranga City Council.
Mr. Chair, one of my suggestions was to have a policy which was something about ensuring a safety on our network, as opposed to ensuring that the infrastructure had lighting. I don't know whether that is going to be picked up in the plan and whether it should be reflected in the response, because I haven't seen the plan yet.
So in essence, the proposed process as we go through, process the changes that were requested yesterday, draft that up, and then make any consequential amendments to our recommendations to reflect, to align with those changes. So they will be picked up.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to submit number 3. This was essentially in support of the plan, so largely accepted. Submitter number 4. This was a submitter in support of new models, for example, on demand public transport, investigating the rail network, strongly supporting park and ride policy, supporting investigations into rapid transit. Okay, so submitter 5, strongly agreeing with the challenges and opportunities.
Would you like me to read out the person for each, so you know? So this is Liz Cooper,
number 5.
in Tauranga.
This was one of the submitters that requested special event services, so we had a discussion about that yesterday, and we'll be looking into a policy around that. Talks about the targets being too soft, and obviously we have to draft up a response around the targets that will be a little bit different to the original response that we drafted.
So what's that response likely to look like?
Well, I think we need to process the information from yesterday, but I think it's being a bit more proactive and using some more language that suggests urgency around getting those targets revised.
Just remember, if you don't measure, you can't manage. So data is critical, and targets
And
will help us get there.
Yeah, and there's also that there was a request to think about an aspirational target that might form part of our statement at the front end of the plan.
Yeah, Turner.
Just the one thing I noticed with that submission was they had that percentage. They were looking at measuring jobs, the number of people who are going to work on on public transport. It was they were very specific in what they were, where they thought the target could be a bit higher. But yeah, it was a.
This one also reference or request less waiting at hubs, and we have said that we've got a policy that seeks to improve reliability and punctuality, and realistic and achievable timetables. But I just wonder whether we could add words in there to ensure efficient transfer at hubs or something like that to acknowledge the point.
We talk quite a bit about customer focus, and that's part of the. If we put the customer at the front of everything, we'll achieve that, won't we?
Understanding that a hub is where you would be if you were changing buses, right?
Correct.
That's fine.
We could, through the chair, we could probably also mention that we're working on a new service delivery model, which might, well, I guess the whole idea of that is to improve the service to the customers and reduce those waiting times between services and so forth. So we could mention that for the Tauranga.
Actually remove, where possible, transfers.
Okay, submitter number 6, Ellie Reid from Rotorua. Strongly supporting some of the challenges, reducing emissions, talks about the need to regenerate the CBD in Tauranga. Rotorua, sorry. And that, you know, that has links with transport.
Call for more electrical buses and the concept of trams.
Yes, so
it's basically about the climate crisis and reducing carbon emissions. Options to achieve same.
So certainly there's policies in the plan that support some of those suggestions. There is a response there around sort of the rapid transit type concept in Rotorua is probably less viable just because of the size of Rotorua. But yeah, I guess there's other way. You know, if you want a tram in the CBD, it might be a commercial tram, or for example, he cited the Christchurch version.
Always a proposal and a dream that one day there'd be a tram service from the lakefront out to Waka. But I think we've got to wait for the return of the tourism industry to come back, and secondly, as you say, it's about population to sustain it.
Oppet might be interested in.
Friend.
It's one thing with the electric tram thing. I don't know, don't have a full understanding of what the capacity is community by community, but I know that the Infrastructure Commission has stated that in New Zealand, with everything we're planning, we need to increase power generation by 170%. So it's a bit of a, in terms of our capacity, that's a bit of a concern.
Might go back to steam trains.
Don't mention coal.
Yeah, no, we're not mentioning coal.
Okay, moving to submitter number 7, James Denyer. The essence of this submission was around this disparity between service provision between Te Puke and Tauranga and Katikati and Tauranga, noting that frequencies are lesser from Katikati and we don't have a weekend service. And basically the response, or the draft response, is we recognise there is a disparity in service. Both of those services are classified in the plan equally. We do recognise in the TSP program that we're looking to increase service provision in the northern corridor, and we've also referred it to the network planning team to have a think about the service frequencies and the hours of operation, days of the week.
Recognising the cost as well, though, that because the Katikati Makaurau services I'm just going off my memory now. I've got it here somewhere. $70 something per passenger trip. So it's a nice theory, but he needs to somehow get the patronage up.
Yeah, and I think there's a comment in the draft recommendation around providing there is sufficient demand.
Thank you.
I just wonder whether we can't have some sort of comment that the service levels in the plan are a desired level of service, which will be achieved once the demand is there. Because there's no point in putting on extra buses to match the timetable if there's nobody to run them. So just if we could make that point.
Okay, moving to submitter number 8, priority 1. So some key points in their submission was around support for UFTI and its development, a challenge there to council and its partners to think and act more boldly, be more innovative around solutions. Generally supports the direction of the plan, but has outlined a number of points that they think could be stronger in the plan. Specific relief includes modernising your approach to public transport, using new technology, improving customer service. This is one of the submitters that sort of raised questions around how functions are currently delivered, how there's a function split between partners. There's also support for identifying the key challenge of climate change, talk about the hydrogen proposal that priority 1 is working through, and I guess sort of requesting council support for that. And then the third point, I guess this was reiterating some of the previous themes around customer experience, and then the need for sort of tangible actions and policies that support what they're seeking. And they've identified a number of new initiatives that could assist improving customer perception. Some of these being things like smaller buses, bus priority lanes, bringing forward the transition to a zero-emission public transport fleet, thinking about a ferry service, looking at the delivery of functions, and developing an on-demand service. So there are some detailed responses there, but I guess it's going to draw on some of our recommended responses from those key themes, because most of them are covered in our substantive recommendations.
Thanks for me.
We did discuss a new policy championing working cohesively with partners, so that is definitely a point that can be picked up. And I just wondered in the last point we could mention the PTOM, the proposed changes to the PTOM and the flexibility that may give us to be able to achieve different service delivery models in the future.
Yep.
Okay. Submission number 9, Sarah Carley. So the submission points here was, again, considering more frequent, smaller electric buses. Talk about the scheduling, improvements needed to scheduling. And then there was a comment around school services, sort of coordinating with schools around those. Because I guess the behaviour change is probably not so apparent to the submitter in terms of the store people driving their cars to school, kids to school. And she did have a comment that working with Waka Kotahi to look at people running their engines outside schools, which is probably a little outside the scope of the plan, but something we can refer to Waka Kotahi. Okay, submission 10, Robin Scrimshaw. Again, supporting passenger rail, ferries, and has a service recommendation on the Rotorua to Tauranga service, just around the timing of services and allowing space for a full workday to be completed, and also thinking about weekend services. So similar to submitter 7 around having weekend services from the north. And again, this is sort of a referral back to our team around that, but I could probably flesh out that answer a little bit more.
So, Chairman, in terms of rescheduling, to me it's a very simple solution, but can the staff give us some response here as to, is it difficult, or is it challenging, or is it near nigh impossible? Or, I would have thought that would have been a great winner to have had people coming into Tauranga to work and then get home at an appropriate time late in the afternoon or early evening.
Yeah, to be honest, I think that's how the service is planned. It might just depend on what those working hours are, I guess. But certainly that's something that would need to go to our network planning team for a more detailed review.
Chair, question. A number of these responses refer to the fact that these matters are going to be referred to the network team for review. And the question that comes to my mind is, so what and when? And if I was a submitter, I'd want to know what the process is in terms of submitting it to the public network team. What are the scheduled reviews that are likely to take place? And, are people going to have to wait 5 years before this gets actioned in a review? So it's that kind of, I think we just need a bit more information given back to submitters about timeframes.
Because there is a time frame for reviews, so yeah, that can be added. The issue with the Rotorua, as I say, is one of cost, but therefore it's one of size of bus, and we've originally been obliged to have bigger bus, but I'm wondering if we've put the horse too far before the cart, and to try and get them, if we had a 20-seater bus instead of a 44-seater bus, is it gonna? Because we're not even looking like ever filling that service even close. Is that a possibility, or is it too cost prohibitive to change the capital structure?
Can I just ask a question too? I want to make sure I haven't jumped to the wrong conclusion. I've assumed from things I've read and heard that high user times will be the scheduled, where you'd use your scheduled buses, and low user times would be where you might go into an on-demand service. Or is that not?
That's one model.
Okay, that's only one model.
That's only one model.
Okay, thank you.
The other model, of course, is you can access areas that buses don't access. So it's a whole new area. Yes. And that's probably more attractive. Your point about the rural areas is included, and obviously some of our suburban areas as well, which are not accessible to buses.
Lorraine got a clarification.
Lorraine, are you?
I guess Lorraine's just raised a good point around some of these Western Bay services. We have a key process, the PT services and business services and infrastructure business case, which is kind of looking at that new network model and so forth. So I guess a lot of these responses are contingent on what comes out of that process as well.
So maybe that needs to be identified to the
I
submitter.
certainly can raise it in the detailed responses. Yeah.
Yeah. You're right there, Michelle. Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
Okay, do you want to move to the next submitter?
Yep.
Number 11, Tristan Binge.
Based. Yeah, no, but based where you only give us the street. Carlisle Street, is it?
Yeah, so I guess this was a submission on some specific regional services. And sort of a plea to reintroduce the Twin City service between Tauranga and Rotorua, and also again look into electric buses.
So those intercities, do they not use a B card currently to Wakatani Tauranga? Because he's asking for a B card on that.
I believe some services are still manual, just because of the integration of systems hasn't been completed. So again, yeah, I'd have to talk to our team around that.
Do we have any sense of the number of people who live in either Rotorua or Tauranga and work in the other place, or go to a tertiary institute or a school in the other place? Do we know what?
For you, Jim, the number of commuters is eye-watering.
I
But they all travel by motor car.
Yeah. Okay.
You know,
So we don't
But
really
half
know.
our schools in Rotorua are staffed by Tauranga teachers, and I can
Yes.
tell you half our nurses are staffed from Tauranga, and I'd say the case is vice versa, but
Yes.
they're all in motor cars.
Right. So we don't really know, but
And
it's
carpooling,
substantial.
a lot of carpooling goes on.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, submitted 12 was basically on behalf of the Public Transport Committee, just to tidy up some housekeeping, I think, from when we made a decision to release the plan for public consultation, and there was some last minute requests from members, so that was making sure it was factored into the process. Submission number 13.
Oh, sorry. This number 12 is the one where it wanted investment challenges and affordability challenges, and we did pick up that, I believe, and is going to be added in as an additional challenge. So, sorry, Bon, keep on going.
Okay, submitter number 13 is Kathleen Lucas. This is a specific submission around Pies Park City Service route number 1, and sort of network changes that are required a transfer when travelling between Pies Park and the hospital / Cameron Road. The draft response basically notes there is a direct link between Pies Park and the city, but it travels via Fraser Street, meaning there is a requirement to transfer it red and to access the hospital and other destinations along Cameron Road. I think this specific request again would form part of our considerations in terms of our Western Tauranga West network refresh.
Yeah, and once Cameron Road upgrade has been done, we would be silly to look at anything until we've actually, got through that upgrade, I would have thought.
And there was also Oh, there was a bus shelter removed near her location. So again, I've referred that to the Tauranga City Council for consideration. The improvement program. Okay, submitted number 14, Jennifer Wasley. There's a little bit of a suggestion about moving away from a hub and spoke approach and having more direct services. And I think that's starting to align with our thinking. On-demand public transport, appropriate size buses, and providing a good customer experience. And there's a suggestion there around legibility, around having sort of colour-coded buses and routes, so I guess a branding exercise. And yeah, sort of noted that suggestion and said it has been implemented elsewhere in the city. Obviously will require a bit of change to the fleet if that was going to be a branding exercise, but certainly something worth considering in the future.
Also limits flexibility from the bus operator point of view. If you, so
There'd be a number of issues that would need to be
We need
worked
to be
through.
careful on how positive we are on that. Simply
Yeah.
just the size of the fleet would be quite.
yeah, we haven't got big enough. Okay.
We'll end up restricting ability to move vehicles into different routes, it's not like a train line.
Another call for the Twin Cities. Yes. Note from Jennifer Wasley.
Okay, are we on to the next one?
15.
15, Daniel Barnett. Basically support and, oh yes, it seeks a stronger focus for increasing public transport opportunities for disabled people. Yeah, I guess we just at this point note some of the key provisions in the plan that promote that accessibility. Obviously, a lot of our standards and infrastructure standards and best practice vehicle standards are things that help support accessibility for disabled people. And, we've got some fears too, which I could probably note down.
This submission is from the commercial arm, I think, of the IHC. So people with intellectual disability, but I think you just need to remind them of the major advances Council has done in the last 12 months in particular. I think it's addressed most of the concerns that he's raised on behalf of that entity.
We had a bit of a discussion yesterday, and I don't think I'm not clear what we landed on around our vision statement. I had suggested that we add in the word accessible because it wasn't covered. We just talked about regional connectivity, but then Councillor Thompson suggested a simpler vision statement. So I'm not sure where we ended up, but if we did decide to put in the word accessible, I'd suggest that we could note that in this response.
Yeah, we could perhaps clarify that because I guess my initial notes were around adding to the existing vision statement rather than replacing it totally. But we'll have to get some direction from the subcommittee on that.
It's just note that to come back to after we've gone through that.
Okay, submitted number 16. This is I think a Rotorua based submitter, Darwin Park. So they questioned what does mode shift mean. So response around that was adding a definition to the glossary. They sort of nailed what it was. And then I guess the key issue was around the integration with bikes, and particularly in Rotorua, so bike racks on buses. And we just note that we do have on all of our contracted buses bike racks to support that integration. Submitter number 17, Mike Brooker. Essentially sort of agrees with sort of the strategic direction in the plan. I guess has a certain level of skepticism, around people's sort of dependence on cars and whether that sort of behaviour change can be achieved. Sort of talks about need for greater public education and awareness, and also talks about regional services and thinking about connections, not only intra-regionally, but across to sort of Cambridge, Hamilton, so inter-regional services. And we just note some of the planned actions we've got in the plan around our regional services strategy and working with Waikato Regional Council. Those proposals.
Notice the last two, by the emphasis, and I thought, actually, it's not to quickly dismiss it, is the sense that there's providing the correct mechanisms for public transport, but you could do all that and get it absolutely incredible and people still wouldn't get on the bus. So there's that whole, that public education and motivation is a whole work stream in itself, region by region, community by community, probably.
And I think that's something that needs to be noted.
Yes.
That all the hard physical stuff we do in both operations and infrastructure needs to be backed up with a really good communication plan, because we're not winning the minds at present.
I mean, yesterday I mentioned the Ohopi bus route, which is the most prolific one that we've provided with, and I made it from a social economic response. But actually, there's a community that, quite frankly, my knowledge of who and what people live there, with a bit of education, could actually really fill that bus up and get it really, making it really usable. That's a real challenge that could turn that around big time without even changing much if money wasn't available. So there is that other side of the argument that needs to be, and that's tricky actually, because it's changing human behaviour. Great fun.
Okay, submitter number 18. So this submitter raised the whole issue that we've probably discussed yesterday around it's great to provide public transport. There's a whole lot of levers that you need to, other levers or mechanisms that you need to implement to sort of achieve your mode shift goals. So the draft response is really, we're aware of those. We've got some supportive policy. We note that as a regional public transport plan, and we need to work with partners on all of those levers to sort of achieve the outcomes that we're seeking. And other key points was just what are the basics of a successful public transport service: reliability, frequency, accessibility, which is certainly stuff that we agree with and enable in the plan. Okay, submitter 19 was from a public transport operator. Generally in agreement with the policy, the RPTP and the direction. Made some interesting points here around the whole service sustainability, how do we retain drivers, how do we design a network that takes into account the need for a sustainable workforce. So taking that comment on board and proposing a policy principle and an action in the plan to address that. And the other point that the submitter raised was around how the contract units are currently configured, I guess. Just questioning whether that's the optimal mix for the region in terms of, I guess, the marketplace having a competitive market and probably having some inbuilt resilience in the system to address things like driver shortages. Again, I thought was a good point, and there's an action around that to undertake a technical review of our contract units and come up with some recommendations around what is the optimal mix.
Tension back in the system.
Okay, submitter number 20, age concern Tauranga. And this body was represented at the hearings. So these were, I guess some good suggestions around promotional marketing initiatives, service planning and design, sort of, I guess some sort of, service planning basics around concentrating where demand is greatest, ensuring accessibility and convenience of bus stops and shelters, and notes that there's sort of opportunities to attract government funding for public transport, additional opportunities, and I think that's something that the Regional Council is actively pursuing on a number of areas. And again, seeking rationalisation of passenger routes. So this is our service operating model. Again, how do we sort of provide a more customer-friendly service that reduces waiting times and so forth? And I think there were some specific points around sheltered seating, and we'll refer that on to Tauranga City Council.
And he asked for parking rights as well.
Okay, number 21, Monty Cunningham. Probably a little bit of a challenging us on our challenges. Probably more the wording or how the titles are arranged. Kind of probably accepts some of his points on those. I guess promoting on-demand public transport, and then consideration of other modes again, so rails, tramway, ferries from Kirikiri and Rotorua. So yeah, I guess there'll be some slightly revised detailed responses on some of those subject matters.
Just thinking, Mr. Chair, when we've developed our aspirational front piece, which will be a box or something like that in the front of the plan, for all of those submitters, and it may be for all of the submitters, it might be something that we can actually put in their response to say, we are wanting to be aspirational. This is an insert in the plan, and then go into the detailed responses.
Okay.
So just continuing on, the submission had a few more points. Just, I guess some of them were questions around, does the scope of sort of land use and integration policies include settlements like Rotorua, Te Puke, etc.? I said yes, they're within the scope of policies in that section of the plan. Talks about worker initiatives with employers, And yeah, so we do have a policy that we're a policy and an action where we're proposing to sort of better engage with employers around how do we meet the needs of their workforces. There is a bit of a request here for rail from Tauranga. I guess the draft response is that there's probably significant technical barriers to that at the moment. Might be alternative ways of providing that access to Tauranga. Okay, submitter 22, Debs Turner. This submitter had some specific suggestions and requests around bus service reliability, I guess reducing the number of buses not in service, the suggestion for an orbiter bus around the shopping malls, smaller buses, some timing for Rotorua, Whakatane, Tauranga services, a bus to Bay Park, and better information for passengers.
One of her requests was also to have anti-clockwise services, wasn't it? So have we addressed that request?
Anti-clockwise.
She believed that if the buses went the other way around, it would, on some of the routes, it would actually make a much quicker journey. I'm certain it was Debs, wasn't it? Yeah. I'm not sure whether that was in her written submission or her verbal submission, but I definitely
No, it was in her verbal. It said run some of the services anti-clockwise, but I didn't actually understand how that.
Well, I guess services run to and from origins and destinations, and essentially
That's what they
go back
did.
and forth. Unless we have an orbiter service, and she wants to go clockwise, anti-clockwise, but we don't have an orbiter service at this point.
No, it was specifically one of the Papamora routes, I'm sure.
But
So
they don't run as an orbiter even there.
Unless there's a loop there that.
So, Chair, this leads me to ask, how can we ramp up our community engagement and tap into the user experiences of people like Debs Turner? You know, I know we had attempted it in this triennium, but I really do urge the incoming council to really take it seriously, and in the various communities, you know, Whakatane, Rotorua.
Yes. So the Hopi run again, they've actually done that, the anti-clockwise. And it's they think it's going to be more effective, and it's purely because if you're coming from a Hopi and you just want to go to town, under the old direction, that was the last way of an hour's trip. If you went into town first and then went round the other way, the majority of people who were looking to catch the bus got what they wanted.
Yes,
the
it's
time
quite
away.
specific.
Yes, that's right. So
But I don't think Debs.
Okay.
She didn't. She was talking about an anti-clockwise system, but I couldn't gauge on the notes I took on her.
I've noted is suggest orbiter bus go anti-clockwise, Fraser Cove, Tauranga CBD Hospital.
Oh yes, so I guess that's the proposed orbiter bus that currently doesn't exist, but we can
He also mentioned the Matua bus being anti-clockwise.
So I think all of these things need to be picked up in the Western Services Network Review, and I think that's what the refresh exercise is about, sorting out some of these anomalies with existing services.
Chair, just as a point of clarification, the committee that I think you chair, the community engagement one that we had, that the young college lads got put on, is Debs Turner on that? Because I can see great value in that. She is on that, is she? And she contributes to it. And okay, good, okay. But I do think we need to ramp it up. you know, personal travel experiences of these individuals.
Okay, submitter 23. Susie.
How's your
I guess some submissions in support, but also noting, I think this aligns with the Vision 2032 submission point around the target's too low, and talks about social equity, i.e. 5% is three times less than the total number of people living below the poverty line in the Bay of Plenty. So I guess we'll have a revised response and perhaps an aspirational target as part of our recommendation.
who was that submitter?
Susie, I had it written, it's tiny print.
Susie Kelsey.
Kelsey. Susie Kelsey.
Based where? Tower Street. Is that in Wellington? Do we? Not mine. Okay.
Tower Street.
Just a suggestion. We talk about in our response that the government's released the National Targets of New Zealand Emission Reduction Plan. I just wonder whether that should be shown in this diagram on page 13 of the plan, the policy context for the Bay of Plenty RPT plan. That diagram obviously was developed before the emissions reduction plan, and we do mention that in the appendices, but it actually is going to be a major driver. And I wonder if we can get it added into that figure 2.
Mr. Chairman, this brings me back to the conversation we had yesterday, which was firstly an acknowledgement that our current operating model, figure 2, is changing fast with emissions regulation and legislation, with PTOM, etc. So somewhere the dynamic nature of that operating environment needs, and I thought it was going to be highlighted in our right up front, in your face, these are the challenges going forward. So is that going to be the case, or because that's very much business as usual, and what we have acknowledged is it ain't business as usual. There's going to be a lot more regulation and legislation, both enabling and prescriptive, that we're going to have to follow. So I'm trying to understand where we're going to be giving that message.
We have to be careful because, we've had signals of a lot of things, but actually, when it comes to the PTOM, it's not going to be till 2023. It's that.
But this is a 10-year plan.
Yeah,
and it should be
there's no certainty around until they've done the legislation. There's no certainty around any of it.
Well, that's not an excuse not to actually flag that there are potential operating environmental issues that may well impact on the strategies in this, strategies and policies in this plan. I mean, for example, we know that Tauranga City Council is undertaking an emissions reduction exercise, as we are. So, there is a lot of stuff that actually is happening now and that potentially may happen. And I just I thought we sort of had agreed yesterday that we were going to flag that dynamic, and which meant that the message we were giving to people reading the plan is that, as this operating environment evolves, we're going to have to make sure that we're nimble and flexible.
We did talk about putting in a commentary under 1.2.3, which is reviewing the RPT plan because of that dynamic but it may be even in the aspirational statement as well.
Comment? Brian?
Yeah, we noted the discussion yesterday and proposing to do some rewording.
So are you suggesting, Councillor Thompson, that we actually redraw that, or?
No, because that's current. As when this goes out, when it's
noting that?
Yeah, but we
Okay.
need to note,
Yeah.
because it's a strategic document, i.e. longer term, that the operating environment is very dynamic and possibly subject to quite considerable change.
Okay. We're moving on to
24,
24.
or Brindle? Paul Brindle?
This
is
was
it?
a 1 point submission, and it's
Brittle.
around.
Brittle.
Sorry. Using electric buses, smaller electric buses is basically the key point. Submission number 25, Kate McMillan. So this was essentially presenting on the vision and the Wednesday challenge submission. So yeah, we'll need to revise this to provide a detailed response based on that, on the response to the Wednesday challenge submission. And then submitted 26 is Matthew McMillan. This is, yeah, very similar submission, Wednesday challenge submission, notes step change required to deliver public transport. And a lot of these submissions, I guess I'd note that, yeah, there is strong for support for the intent of the plan. It's really around extending that or taking that next step. Submitter 27 had a number of submission points, and this was Celine Con. So one of the submission points was around safety and personal security at bus stops and interchanges that we talked a little bit about yesterday. So the response is just noting some of the actions in the plan and the policies to support that, recognising we had a discussion and some additional work to do on that. Ferry service support, light rail, park and ride. Kind of wanted to know what was defined as public transport. So basically the response there is from the Act, what could be considered public transport. And we do note there's an enabling policy around rapid transit, which is kind of a mode neutral policy that could count for any of the modes mentioned in the Act, providing it was viable and feasible in terms of cost benefit analysis. Does seek a vision statement to include diversity of public transport modes, just noting it's sort of the mode neutral approach in the plan. Again, it needs to be feasible and viable. And then submissions on light rail, ferry, collaboration with other agencies around some of the societal issues that might be contributing to safety and security issues on the bus service. And yeah, had a suggestion around moving the rail track away, and the draft response just notes some of the previous work that the Regional Council's commissioned on that. Which basically says it's very, very hard.
With respect to that, I note that the government's doing some work on passenger rail, particularly interregional passenger rail. I just wonder whether we shouldn't note that that work's going underway and we are following it as a regional council.
Yeah, I think in part of our response, we note that we'd actively participate in any business cases. So if there's one that's come through recently, I know there's a little bit of a grey area around whether that was going ahead. Yeah, so
This case, I understood it was a task force or something set up by central government.
No, it's a multi-party initiative that's been set up privately. This is the one that James Llewellyn's part of.
No, I don't think so. This is a national.
This was a national. I went on to the. They invited me to go onto the webinar with them, and what do they call themselves? Trans.
Yeah, I just had advice from Lorraine that I think there's one of the committees has.
The Transport and Infrastructure Committee is undertaking an inquiry into interregional passenger rail, and we received a submission from a group called Tauranga, who are a community-led group who are looking to form a kind of a consortium that we may or may not be part of to promote their interests, which were in the submission that they've also taken to the Transport and Infrastructure Inquiry.
Of the work being done by the select committee, that I just wonder whether we should note that this is underway and we're keeping an eye on it.
Yeah, we can certainly note that in the recommendations that go back to submitters on passenger rail. So moving to submitter 28. Just as Yannicka, who just had 1 point that they strongly supported challenge 2, meeting the access needs of smaller urban centres and rural communities, and notes that it's basically a real challenge for them. Submitter 29, this is Bike Whakatane Trust. I guess support for some of the vision statement suggests improved connectivity to our rural areas. So we originally picked up on that with the regional connectivity, but we're going to sort of embellish that a little, I think. We can have a discussion about it first, but one proposal is to embellish that with accessibility.
So that's the Disability Trust that they've got a set.
No, this is the Bike Whakatane Trust. So yeah, a lot of their submission points is around the integration between bikes and buses. Yeah, and
bike.
Yeah, we're just sort of noting that we support modal integration. We enable bike use on buses, and we'll factor in consideration that when we do our regional service strategy. Submitter 30, Tassiano Milpont. Again, this is around the transformational change needed. Feels the plan is not aspirational enough to deliver on the goals of urban for AFTI. So Tauranga area. And then, yeah, discusses some of those car dependency. How do we change people's behaviour? What sort of levers can we push to make that happen? I guess that might be reflected back in our aspirational statement for the system. Submitter 31, Pamela Thorpe. Again, a step change required. We need to reduce CO2 emissions. Talks about mode shift, zero emission public transport, on demand public transport, ferry, and a ferry service. So yeah, our modified responses would cover off on those topic areas. Submitted number 32, Alpha Thierry. So yeah, had some particular concerns about the existing Tauranga service. Some of those are obviously the need for transfers, meaning trips take longer. So we pretty much, yeah, we need to address that as part of our service planning. And yeah, probably not so happy with the disruptions in the CBD around, I guess, the temporary infrastructure and temporary bus stops and so forth. So yeah, point noted.
A call for innovation.
Well, we've just got to get through that construction fast, Mr. Commissioner. So you're very quiet today, Commissioner.
My
Okay.
sense is that many of these issues we dealt with yesterday. So unless there's something new, I'm not making a contribution.
No, you're right.
Do you want to?
I've just been flippant.
I'm quite happy to go by exception now if people are tired of my voice. I'm getting a sore throat.
Yeah, I'd support going by exception now because I too agree. I think we've covered a number of these points yesterday, and so I'd like to go by exception if that's all right, Mr. Chair.
Everybody happy with that? All in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Okay, well done, Silver.
So, submitter 33, Eastern Bay Accessible Transport Charitable Trust. Anyone wanted to raise any points on that one?
Could you just give me a minute to have a look at my note on the plan because
while you're doing that, I think one thing that we should, what they're doing as a private organisation is a really good template for us to support if, rather than us provide a service, if there's a private, a well set up private resource doing something, we're much better to support it than duplicate it.
I don't know whether it's worth stating in the strategy, but actually to say that there's some private initiatives in their early infant stages in the Eastern Bay of Plenty that we need to watch. They are targeted to a particular demographic, but the application of what they're learning in a wider sense to the wider public may be a future way forward for that region. So I do think that they're very much, particularly the Eastern Bay Plenty Villages group, they're at an early stage of development. It's quite new, but our Deputy Mayor is on that committee as a volunteer. So we think that there's a real opportunity to look and learn and see what they're learning can be applied more widely. And that, I guess in a year's time, that maybe become a lot clearer. But again, if we see that as a strategic observation to be making that could inform
And it's
redesign
value for money for us as well.
and redesign in the future. Yes, absolutely.
Clearly flagged that we're keen to collaborate.
Great, thank you.
My only comment that I made about this submission was we changed the words under policy 2.5 to community transport initiatives. Specifically, they mentioned shared transport services as well. And I just wonder whether people understand from our use of community transport initiatives that this means potentially shared transport services. I just had a question, should we say and shared transport services, or e.g. shared transport services or something, because it was a specific thing that they asked.
What might also become clear is that there are some gaps that they can't fill that a refreshed public transport system could then do a complementary fill-in for. So, I think there's all sorts of potential options coming off the back of it, and not just in terms of duplicating what they're doing elsewhere, but actually where they can see that there's some gaps in their own service that aren't being met and they can't afford to, that we could look at a service that filled in there too. So it's not just a learning thing, but a complementary development that could come out of it.
Yeah, I'll have a look at the wording. And just clarify that, because I guess there's different connotations of shared services, and there could be, it could mean you say something else rather than what we mean.
Yeah, no, understand.
Okay, submitter 34, Whakamarama Community Inc. Submitter number 36, Enviro Hub, Bapeni.
Just going back to 35, I think we've got to take it seriously. It is from the Whakamarama Community Incorporated Association, and they raise issues like safety, park and rides, and call for greater consideration of on-demand and rural communities that feed down to state highways. Yeah. I just gloss over it, It is from a community association and one of our.
Can I just ask, if in these situations, is there an opportunity if a community found a way forward for itself that they would be then entitled to any subsidies or support that the rest of the service gets, even though it's not necessarily owned by the regional council as such? Is that a possibility going forward?
That's what we say.
That's what I guess.
That's what we have to be open to looking at, is finding ways to support existing community groups that are doing stuff, if it is going to save us actually duplicating the system.
That's great.
And this is why I made the comment that we need to be trying to future-proof our park and rides, identify them, because it's buried within the TSP at the moment. But I know this community and they're quite frustrated they can't access the bus. It's just not practical for them. But, if there was a flag that somewhere there would be one, these communities, so quite large feeder communities coming down from the hills, that this is going to be a potential location sometime in the future, would make a huge difference to them. But I have confidence that TSP is going to pick up Whakamarama as an area for park and ride.
Haven't or you have?
No, I haven't. Well, I've got no visibility of it.
Just a suggestion on submission 33. Is it possible that new policy in terms of supporting community transport initiatives could be a co-design process?
Certainly, I think, that's our intention, is we want to look at, those community models that are being worked and probably, co-design something that fits for the region, because other regions have policies, but I think we need to make sure it works for the Bay of Plenty region.
I think it would be sending a seriously good signal to our community groups if we are invested in co-designing with them.
In the early stages, when they're kind of in the setup mode, they're doing a bit of obviously experimentation and trial and error, little bits and pieces. So they're quite happy to do that, and then feed, that then fed into a partnership opportunity in the future. That both sides would benefit from what they've learned in that setup space.
Okay, moving on. So I actually originally missed submitter 34, which was Russell Williams. Russell presented to us and had some specific issues he raised around. 35. I'm getting lost now.
35 was the elder's perspective.
Oh, 35.
Yeah.
Yeah, so again, the transfer route 1, I think, was raised as an issue, and also the location of the bus stop in Tauranga, and
Hospital to Prize Park.
Yeah. So the fact that you need to transfer on that trip currently, and obviously, so that'll be part of the service review.
A plea to make Greaton a true hub. I've got here.
Can I just ask a question? With retirement homes, do they provide their own public transport system for their residents? Is that the normal?
Not here.
Okay.
But through you, the first call that came to us for an on-demand service in this area came from a collection of rest homes and retirement villages up at Pies Park. And that's referenced here, about councillors going out and meeting with them and nothing happened. And that's where the first call came from.
It increased the service and it hasn't been heavily attracted.
Okay, submitter 36, EnviroHub.
Sorry, just on 35, and it's a specific, but is it true that people have to walk up and down 20 steps from bus to and from the shopping centre?
Yes, I believe that is true.
No ramp.
Well, there's a long
Would have thought it would have been possible to put a ramp.
Private property.
I do know there's a planning process on for a Tauranga interchange. And a lot of these things like accessibility have to be has to be raised, I think.
Yeah, that's quite an extensive mediation, if you like, between the property owner and TCC, and it's a complex issue. It's not just putting in a ramp. It's where the bus operation will be, the impact on the mall, all of that.
Councillor, just a reminder when you're speaking to speak into your microphone, because those on Zoom can't hear.
Okay, we're moving on to 36, EnviroHub. $37, Gary. Gary Perry. $37 is go. No, oh, sorry. I said 37, Harry Perry 38, it's lift and go.
Could I just ask, would we be likely to be engaging with them in the design of our on-demand services, or will we be doing it ourselves?
I guess essentially the process is to engage with probably a commercial provider, but there is a marketplace out there, so there's a number of people in that field.
I found his submission quite interesting in that he couldn't name anybody he's actually dealing with.
I just think that was commercial sensitivity. You know, he did indicate that we're dealing with.
He said they had a hub in Auckland or something, but
I thought he was a bit guarded because of commercial sensitivity. That's the take I took from it.
I guess we just have to be aware that we have procurement processes and so forth when we're doing this sort of work, and we need to be aware of that in terms of.
The ideas and concepts were very interesting.
I think what we've got to address, and I'm sorry I haven't read this specific response, but they made recommendations for a specific on-demand trial, as did somebody else around Ultimotai, and we've gone out to, we've got a process underway for Tauranga South, so I think we need to be clear about that this is why we're still pursuing Tauranga South.
yeah, that lift tango he was recommending a mount one, mount.
I agree with Jane. We need to be very clear about what our rationale was for going with Tauranga South. I agree.
Okay, number 39, Carol Gordon.
She made a call for 6 monthly public engagement conversations. So what can we do to address that? Or are we covering that in our community consultation group that you chair, Chairman? But I've got a note here that she specifically asked for 6 monthly public engagement conversations. She went to great lengths to emphasise that policies will be successful if there's strong community ownership. So how are we harnessing that?
I was just going to say, I think one of the things that was really blatantly obvious to me was you've got that the people who made submissions are opportunities to socialise. They are passionate about the stuff, and with a little bit of help and nudge, I think they would actually be big.
We need to harness them, Your Worship.
Yeah,
I guess through the chair, from a staff perspective, in this current training, we did have a Western Bay community group that was quarterly. That was the model for this training. Obviously, we're going to move into a new training and have a new setup. So I guess the mechanisms for that community engagement would be sort of up to the decision makers in that new training.
I've got a comment here that people need to be respected partners in a trusted process. So I think it's about being genuine in our intentions.
With regard to this one, the submission summary is that 3 vital challenges are identified. Challenges are very real, focused and highly commendable. And we've accepted that and retained identified challenges, but she's very strongly said that mobility and ageing needs to be integrated as a future challenge. That's point 7 on the first page. This is her issue about our ageing population. and mobility is going to be critical, and it's a key challenge to ramp up our service to meet the people that may have accessibility issues. This is another one where we could, if we can have our innovative statement up in lights at the front of the response, it would help. One of her issues is, where is the innovation? Where is the action? Where is the aspiration?
Sure, I'll note that. Note that down.
Yeah, and I think if you read the third paragraph of the submission summary, what it's saying is the plan isn't delivering on new mobility services that better connect people to their community or neighbourhood, which is the 15-minute model. And that's the whole issue of intra-community connection to provide for livable communities. And I think it's a point extraordinarily well made, and yet another lever that we can pull. But I agree with you entirely, Jane. The demography and the ageing population is a huge strategic factor.
But if you go back to our full service model, it was doing for most communities, it was doing a 15-20 minute service, and unfortunately we're in a situation where we're restricted to a weekend service, and that's what's not. So we're really struggling. We want to have a full service as an organisation, but our contractor can't provide it at the moment, and our senior team will go and negotiate hard on Monday, because we really have to get back. If we're going to put customers first, then a more regular service will be the best way to help that.
So the issue is, are we going to consider another challenge, or are we going to give an explanation why we don't think that is a key challenge for us for the future?
I guess just from a policy framework perspective, the plan is endeavouring to provide all-encompassing accessibility from early age to late age, or however you want to say it. So it's encompassing all sorts of mobilities or abilities. So I guess if you specifically reference one, you start narrowing a focus, but that's not our intent. We want to provide for everyone that needs to access our services.
The only I agree with you, but I think the other challenge is this: we know that nationwide the percentage of over 65s in the next 10 or so years is going to be like 25% of the population. It's going to blow out. You guys are already heavily populated, and I don't know what your percentage is, but you're probably there already, which means it's going to get bigger. And so for a season, 10, 15 years or so, that is going to be something that has to be specifically understood and addressed, and for all of us. I don't just mean for Tauranga, but it's clear demographic, clear stats on that.
With respect to Carol, it's a point she's been making with time and time again. It's coming our way.
I just wonder if we're not going to accept it as a challenge, that we can weave in the fact that we have an ageing population somewhere in one of the other three challenges.
I certainly think the scope, we can sort of recognise that being strategic, recognising the demographic challenge over the next few years, and being responsive to that.
Price is a major challenge. Growing demographic of older people.
Okay, submitter 40, making rail work.
think we covered this yesterday.
Yeah.
Submitter 41, Sam Knowles. 41 is Sam Knowles. Submitter 42 is Sustainable Bay of Plenty Charitable Trust.
I have to say, of all the submissions, this was the one that caught my attention more than, and I've had contact with Glenn in the past and seen the work that they've been doing, but they really are very refined in their thinking and have been putting I don't know how long they've been in existence, but they've been doing this for a long time. So I took very seriously the submission. I thought all the submissions were good, but this was particularly outstanding in my mind.
Submitter 43, Wednesday Challenge. For James Hughes. 45 is Waka Kotahi.
And we discussed this, so that of note, the fact that Waka Kotahi did ask for more financials in our plan.
So part of our response is to accept their submission along with the others submitters.
So will that be a prioritised list?
It's more about the forecast, public transport forecast.
Number of that submission, full submission. Have you got the page for that? Sorry, I'm just struggling to find it.
45.
Here it is.
So in terms of the financials, recommendation, funding, information and costs should be incorporated into the plan, outlining as much as possible a 10-year program for service costs. So basically taking what we've got in there and putting in the forecast for the 10 years. So essentially it would be like a graph like that with our forecast funding from our annual plan.
I think what I was referencing was the one at the bottom, which is, however, it would be useful to understand the expected staging over the next 3 years, 1 to 3 years, 3 to 6 years, 6 to 10 years, would help inform an NLTP investment signal for Waka Kotahi and other partners, as well as a public perspective on when changes might be expected. So I don't know whether that is going to be built in with your financial information or not.
In terms of our draft response to that, it's around, I guess the approach in the plan is that the detailed project information soon gets out of date. So that's what we'd probably have in our implementation delivery plan, because it's more fluid, I guess.
I had a presentation from Waka Kotahi last week on a bit of roading planning that they were doing, at the end of which I said to David Spears, I heard this morning on the radio that your organisation is $1 billion short. So is what you've just spent quite considerable time explaining to us locked in? And he said no. So there's a lot of uncertainty right now with them until that financing thing is sorted. In terms of our expectations, think it's a bit of a wake-up call, reality check.
Just a question about the implementation plan. Is that going to be an appendix to the public transport plan?
I guess we're just referencing at this point. It might be more of a live document, but certainly something that we could add as an accompanying document on our website once we've.
And we're making reference to it anyway, but we could direct people to it in the plan. Thank you.
So
Just in regard to that, well, sorry, Stephen.
Oh, thank you. So for me, this highlights the challenge of yesterday, in that we intend, as a result of our discussions, to be more ambitious and bold in terms of our targets. But if we put in a financial that shows the current commitment for expenditure in the LTP, there's going to be an obvious disconnect, because clearly a significant increase in patronage and active modes, etc., will require significant investment by all the parties. And so I think at best all we can do is identify that, and we don't even know what the quantum of that amount would be, but I suspect it's a very large amount. So all we would be able to do is put in our financials as they currently sit, but note that to achieve the targets, it will require a significant increase in the level of investment required from all parties. Because I mean, what are we going to do if we double patronage? Are we going to double our subsidies, or and we just don't know that number. But that will be the reality of what we're facing, I suspect.
Okay, yep, noted around that. So I'll probably have a note next to the financial information that's provided, just noting the challenge there. Submitter 46, Ellen Batkin. Submitter 47, Kaianga Ora. Submitter number 48, Jill Walker. Submitter 49, Port of Tauranga. Submitter 50, Whakatane Grey Power. Submitter 51, Cam McKinnon. Submitter 52, Joshua Cole. Submitter 53, Trust Horizon. Submitter 54, Tauranga City Council. Submitter 55, Tauranga Business Chamber. Submitter 56, Julian Fitter. Submitter 57, Russell Wenslick. Submitter 58, Disabilities Resource Centre Trust. Submitter 59, Heatley Associates. Submitter 60, Whakatane District Council. Submitter 61, Aotearoa, Transporting New Zealand. Submitter number 62, Rodney Milne. Submitter 63, John Robson. Submitter 64 is Roger Drower. Yes, so there's some actions coming out of that. And submitter 65, Victor Luca.
Chair, can I just take us back to number 48? And it's a submission from Jill Walker, who has been a long time resident at Rotorua. Now, this is a call for small rural communities to be connected with the urban centres. I remember growing up in Rotorua in the days of the New Zealand Road Services buses, and all these areas were all serviced in those days because a bus driver took the bus into Rotorua in the mornings and he had other duties to perform, and he took the bus home at night time. And so people in all these rural communities had a direct line of access to the city centre. Now, you know, we've been trumpeting in the last couple of days innovation and collaboration, but, you know, as this submitter says, going past their door every day is the Toiho My Bus connecting Rotorua and Whakatane. Is there some way we could collaborate and allow small numbers of the general public to get on that bus to access Whakatane and Rotorua? You know, this is where collaboration and a little bit of innovation comes in. And likewise, no doubt there'll be safety issues around students and whatever, but allowing the general public onto some of these school buses. I'd like the staff to explore that with the Ministry of Education. And I know there'll be safety issues and you can't have unknown adults on school buses with school kids or something, but they can get on public buses anytime.
No, but that's what the government has been encouraging us to do in Tauranga.
Yeah.
Is to,
yeah. May not be an issue, but you know, it's just getting a little bit collaborative with these communities that are calling out for, you know, once again, smaller buses, innovation.
I wonder whether we sometimes fail to ask, what do you suggest? Rather, you know, because they may have some ideas of things, opportunities they've seen that would work easily. You know.
I've suggested some solutions.
That's right.
Simple solutions, you know. So.
Well, in this case, you know, with the tertiary, we are providing a subsidy, as is Whakakotahi, I think, and as are the university and Polytechs. So it's already a collaboration. So I mean, we can't hurt to talk.
Just through the chair, I'll probably make a comment because I think this was one of the submissions that raised something new that hadn't been raised before, and it was quite an issue, and I sort of recognise that in the response. There's probably no simple and easy solution, but certainly we're willing to have a look into this further because it's probably a new issue that we haven't actually explicitly recognised before. But there's certainly a few vehicles that we could look into, whether it's the community transport type initiatives or better using existing services to serve some of these communities.
But as the worship said, you know, put the quandary to the community. They'll come up with a solution, you know.
Yeah, and certainly in the submission there was a number of points raised that we need to think about further.
And the existing partners, I mean, they've got to agree to it too. I understand it's not just a given, but yeah, I just sort of think sometimes we overlook the obvious and it could be a solution.
And they'll be paying passengers income.
Okay. Anyone want to go back? He went pretty quickly through those last few. Did we miss anything?
I've just been flicking back through the plan, the actual plan itself, where I've made some notes, and I just note, just going back to policy, to submitter 33, there was a request for a policy decision-making framework, and they would like to co-design. Is that what you were talking about when you were suggesting, Councillor Thompson, that we co-design? Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you.
I think in line with Councillor Thurston's thrust, which is around the community panel that we, work with. I really want to see us have a real focus on working with our communities, co-design, and as you say, Mayor Turner, they're the eyes and the, voices. So what do they think? So I think it's a real thrust I'd like to see, really emphasised.
Quite often they have got an idea in their head. They just expect you to second guess them. So, we need to be direct.
All right. Moving on. So where do we go from here? Recognising.
Yeah, I guess we've probably reached the end of the recommendations and so forth. Obviously, we've got to capture a lot of information that we need to process over the next few days, and we need to have a process where everyone's comfortable that when we get to the Public Transport Committee and the Regional Council, the content and the plan reflects the discussion.
Yeah.
Yes.
My feeling, because there's so much change in the track, there's no point going through track changes that aren't current. So I would rather actually give you time to do that than do that by Zoom. But we certainly need to see the final product or the near final product, subject to tweaks. Sign it off.
I just had one comment I really wanted to make, and that is because things are moving so fast, our Appendix A policy context is already out of date. So we talk about the PTOM and the fact that other potential public transport topics such as guidance may be developed in the future. Well, on the Ministry of Transport website, there's actually a list of these guidance documents, and noting that they're going to be released in 2022. So there is so much happening that I just wonder whether we try and get this as up to date as we possibly can.
So another question in that regard, we talk a lot in percentages, it would take a 3% rise here, it would take a 6%. And when we're talking about particularly community, increasing participation in public transport, and this may not be possible, so just shut me down if I'm wrong, but I often wonder whether if we gave specific numbers and said, 3%, which means we're talking about 355 people, or, this is what we would need. That often speaks more to people than a percentage. If we're going to call on them to start to think socially and you start to talk about what that means and from a numbers perspective and in rough terms, I don't know how that might be on the too hard basket, and if it is, that's fine. But I just wondered if we could be, if the public are going to get to read this and get a sense of the size of the challenge, and sometimes the challenge isn't as big as they think. It's actually, it might be 20 people in a small community that would take to get involved in public transport and using it once a week, if even to make a difference. So, I just wondered if that would help.
We can have a look at that. I think just having an idea around the aspirational statement, if we can contextualise that a little. So if we mean how many people currently use our buses, and if we need to achieve a certain target, how many people would that be? That might quantify it a little bit more for the public. I know in the past, things like smart growth have talked about growth and said, what does that mean to you? That means several thousand more people in your city, this number of cars on the road, etc., etc. We can have a look at that.
Yeah, just
Chair, I'm just conscious that Councillor Nees has to go and she wanted us to come back to the vision statement. And I totally accept that adding accessible to the current vision statement. I think there is a submission that we can hang that on. So look, I totally accept that. But in thinking about this a little bit further, and yesterday I suggested a sort of a kind of pithy statement, and I've been really thinking about the use of the word convenient. And if you go to the dictionary, convenience means fitting in well with a person's needs, activities, and plans. And it seems to me that what we're really trying to do over the next 10 years is to provide a system that is convenient for users and is what our environment needs. So, you know, that to me, I don't want to interfere with the vision statement, but it comes again, staff, to the aspirational or whatever we're going to have at the very front, which is to say we're trying to create this plan in an operating environment of intense uncertainty. It's very complex and it's rapidly changing. You know, we've talked about that. And, you know, submitters have made calls or have called on us to be aspirational and bold, and have called on us to look at pulling a number of levers, be it the service operating model, on-demand services, smaller buses, decarbonised fleets, you name it, they've called on it. And I just wonder whether right at the very start we could say, here's an incredibly challenging operating environment, here's what we've heard where people want to get to. There's a range of levers we can pull, but we can't pull them all tomorrow. Maybe we can't, like priority bus lanes. You know, we're not going to have in this city priority bus lanes finished in 2 years or 3 years. So I'm just wondering if we can paint the picture that, you know, it's complex, it's changing, we hear you, we understand where we need to be, where people and our environment needs us to be, a range of levers, but there are some issues under these levers. So just give us a chance to actually get there. That's kind of the messaging that I hope we could sort of portray.
I like the sound of that.
Right up front.
Right up front. We've heard you. We understand where we have to be. It ain't going to happen overnight, and we've all got to commit to this. But, you know, convenience, I keep thinking about why don't I hop on the bus? Because I have to walk down a hill and then up a hill and whatever. Is it convenient for me? Well, no, because it takes me 45 minutes to get into town. But that will change. That will change, you know, Cameron Road and all the rest of it. So, yep, aspirational. And look, I do want to say, I do thank staff genuinely for all of the effort that's gone into this. It's been a huge undertaking, and I wore out my passion yesterday. So, thank you.
Possible.
Mr. Chair, I also wanted to acknowledge the pressure that the staff have been under, the time constraints. It's actually been, you know, I'm sure a huge challenge for them. So I just want to thank them for that as well.
Including you, Amanda, who has done an outstanding job. So thank you.
She's been cheeky to me before.
Can I say thank you too from the Eastern Bay of Plenty, because, you know, we know we're even a bigger challenge, but it's actually just knowing that there's an intention there that's really, really helpful. And so thank you to staff too. Honestly, I know we're difficult to work with politicians. So thank you very much.
Right.
I should add, it's on camera, but Bron, you're doing a Ironman next week, aren't you?
Have you got them?
So this might be the easier task compared to the Ironman next week.
Don't know about that. I guess I sort of had a closing comment that I took some stats on my public transport journey to work today. I thought I'd share them with you. So I took the 2W to work. Was carrying 20 people by the time it reached Bayfair.
Wow.
At that point, 6 people got off. And then another 14 got on for the trip to the CBD. So there were 28 customers on the bus. The driver was courteous. The driving was first rate. I caught my bus from Evans Road in Peppermire, and my journey to the CBD via Lynx Ave and the Hewletts Road bus lanes took me 24 minutes.
But that's the communication strategy. That's got to go alongside what we're doing. We do have some resolutions that we have to adopt. So they're on your screen, I believe.
So
The what, sir?
the one in highlighter has been one editorial.
Did you get that? The number 3 in highlighted has been added, so you might want to change some wording, but as it stands, receives the report, endorses the recommended changes, subject to seeing it written down, including the amendments, approves the minor editorial amendments be incorporated before providing the final draft regional public transport plan for recommendation to the Transport Committee.
You can't revisit any decisions.
Yeah.
Chairman, the draft will go to the public transport meeting, and then hopefully it'll get signed off there and will be rubber stamped at the last council meeting.
Plan.
Brilliant.
Number 2, I thought it should read endorses the recommended changes as discussed, as opposed to as outlined in the report.
Because we haven't seen the report
Right.
yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A little bit blind. So I guess, yeah, the intent of the recommendation is that we capture the discussion and make changes and reflect that in the final draft plan that goes to the Public Transport Committee. So I would say
Which are the amendments
Oh,
specified?
so the ones that.
So I think where you're coming from is should be caught in those last few words, and the second one, including amendments as specified in the minutes, because as we've discussed here, that should be captured in the minutes, and that's what we'll apply in the plan. Does that cover it? I think it does.
Yeah.
and so that third point is just around sort of editorial stuff that if we find a typo or need to update
Or
the
if we
graph.
don't like the look of your draft and ask you to rewrite it, take it again.
So just a hypothetical, if the minutes come out and we don't think something's been captured, we can suggest amendments to the minutes without relitigating.
The document would be circulated via email, and you can make minor changes to it that way, but no major changes. Yeah.
Someone like to move those resolutions?
So moved.
Moved by councillor Thurston, seconded by councillor Neese. Any discussion? There being none, all in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Well, anyone against? That's councillor, Commissioner Selwood. Was he a bit slow?
That's the lag
That's
of
what
the
happens when
system.
you live in Christchurch. I was only pulling your leg. So unanimously accepted. All in favour. Oh, we've said that. So carried. Thank you. And thank you everybody for your patience. There is more afternoon tea downstairs. And time that we finish is 3:15.
This is very impressive. Thank you very much, councillors.
And you'll come back to us when you've got a time for a proposed time for the Zoom. Where are you going? You can't go anywhere. Are you?